go ahead and record to the cloud. Well, hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for taking your Saturday morning to come and learn a little bit about what is the state of CS in Washington State. We have two fabulous people who are willing to give a little bit of a talk on this and then have a bit of a Q&A. Shannon Thissen, I still don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Thissen.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I answer to everyone.
Who is in charge of computer science at OSPI, and Amy Ko, who is a professor at the Information School in Seattle, focusing on computer science education. And so I am at this point going to duck off of this or quiet myself down, and I'm going to leave it to them to run the show. So welcome.
All right, thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Zoom's cranky at me, just a moment. We'll do it this way. All right. Let's press full screen. Everybody can see the slides okay? All right, sounds good. All right, so I'm Amy. You met Shannon. We're going to talk about the state of computer science education in Washington State with a particular focus on K-12. And before we do that, we just wanted to give a bit of context about who exactly we are. So Lauren gave us a little bit of introduction. I'm a professor at the Information School and Computer Science at the University of Washington. And so in addition to research, teaching, and my regular UW service, I also oversee informatics, which is one of our technology majors at the University of Washington. But I also direct this group, the CS for All Washington Advocacy Group with Shannon. And so Shannon and I spend a lot of time working with a lot of other folks in the state of Washington to think about policy, to make sure that there's lots of information coming together about the state of Washington with regard to computer science. And then we do some advocacy and lobbying sometimes for state laws that hopefully help improve the state of computer science education in the state. Shannon, do you want to say a bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm actually a recovering computer science teacher. I used to teach AP computer science and a little of everything else in CTE. And I spent mostly 15 years at Sumner School District, but I've taught at community college, and I taught middle school, and finally ended up in high school. And now I'm the program supervisor. I am the one and only in the state office that does computer science, and going on almost my 5th year, 4.5 years. So it's been quite the journey, and I think we've accomplished a lot. So thank you.
Wonderful, thanks, Shannon. And so the broader team here that we've tried to bring together, you can see everybody here. It's Shannon and myself, and also Tammy Schrader at ESD 101, Lauren sort of representing both UW and CSTA, Ann Wright Mockler at PNNL and Tri-Cities, Pete Phillips at North Central ESD, Carolyn, who I believe is on the call, who's an assistant professor at Western, and Patrick Osteen, who's the West Regional Director for TEALS too. So we have lots of different representation. I think we could certainly have more representation. If any of you are interested or know others who are interested in things relating to policy and other, oh, where are my slides going? And other issues in CS education in the state, let us know, because we need lots of different perspectives to make progress on this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the gaps in our state at a high level, more from a narrative perspective, and then Shannon's going to dig into some of the data that we have that really shows some of those gaps in more detail, and also some of the biases in who's teaching and who's getting access and who's not, and who's taking classes and who's not. And so we'll try to tell that picture of really access and engagement. And then we'll talk about together lots of opportunities for trying to address some of those gaps, ways that you might be able to support your regions, but also the state and existing efforts that you can contribute to. So I'll start off with just some of the inequities in Washington State computer science education. I like to think of it really broadly from the outset, just imagining all of the children that are going to school or not right now, and what they're doing, right? They're learning about reading and writing and humanities and mathematics and science and social studies, art, music, government, health, and wellness. And all of that learning that they're doing is really inspiring them to do different types of subjects later on in their life, right? There are tweens that are cultivating interests in books because they're being asked to read. Some of them are falling in love with math because they're learning arithmetic. Some are falling in love with nature because they're being asked to catalog things that they see in their neighborhoods, right? History, painting, instruments, all of these things. These are the ways that students develop interest in subjects, is that we incorporate them into school. Many youth are encountering computers and software. It may just be an intrinsic part of their life, but they're using it to learn, to connect, and to entertain themselves. And they're integrating it into their daily lives around communication and content, but not so much as creators of computers or creators of software, or people who are envisioning how software might be used in the world or in their communities. And so we see sort of this disconnect across all of these different levels of education, right? So despite how ubiquitous computers are, a lot of the learning about computing, maybe only a fraction, about 5% of primary school children in the state of Washington are encountering ideas about computer science. So even though they might be using computers, they're not learning anything about CS. And the biggest reason for this is that a lot of primary school teachers in the state don't know computer science, don't know that it's a subject worth teaching, and aren't really expected to teach it alongside all of these other subjects. Children's parents don't know it. They're not encouraging youth or their communities to teach it. CS isn't visible in their communities or their lives, except maybe on television or in the movies, which give really narrow stereotypes around who engages in CS. So the only children who are learning CS at these ages are ones that have parents who probably already know it and bring it into their lives in some purposeful way outside of school. When we move up to middle school, it really should be ubiquitous, right? Science can use code to analyze data, right? And yet students are learning how to do experiments on paper and doing manual arithmetic and not getting to benefit from things like simulations. Social studies can talk about computing and society to reflect on questions of ethics and justice and what kind of world we want to live in, computational or not. And then learning computer science itself can trigger lots of interests in robotics and data science and other types of subjects. So there's a lot of opportunity in middle school to bring CS into it and really start developing those interests. But only about 10% of youth in Washington State are encountering CS or have the option of encountering CS in middle school, and even fewer actually take it, as Shannon will show later. And it's really parents who are encouraging their youth to take a CS elective or start in an after-school program, or whose teachers happen to know a bit of CS that they integrate into their subject. But in general, the broader story around middle school is that few have access to it, and even those that do, few actually take it. High school, this continues. Most teens have established interests in other subject areas that school has helped them cultivate and develop. And by then they often have really strong stereotypes around who does computer science and who doesn't. It's for nerdy boys, or it's too hard for me. And if their high school does offer it, it's probably a PSCSTA. And academic advisors often steer youth away from it because of its difficulty and the low likelihood that it helps with college admissions. So there's a whole culture here of, even when there is access, really steering people away from that access. And even then, only students with an existing interest in CS, and they have to be at one of the high schools, one of the 60% of Washington State high schools that actually offer it, actually take that elective. And fewer are going to encounter it in other classes unless they're at one of a few districts that does a lot of integration of CS into other subject areas. And then, of course, as some on this call know, higher education is where we get to sort of the results of a lot of that really biased access, right? Youth that do find their way to higher education and join computer science are the ones that had some history of privileged access. They had a computer, which is not true for all youth in Washington State. They had access to the internet, which is not true for everybody in Washington State. They probably had access to inspiring or encouraging CS teachers, or maybe other role models like parents or friends. Maybe they had parents that understood the value of CS and encouraged it and supported their students doing that in college. And then of course they had to have access to college and the ability to afford it as well. So we're talking about a whole layer of privileges here that allow somebody to get to this point in higher education. And so it's really not a story here of youth discovering their passion for computer science, but often a series of experiences shaped by the opportunities that we have given them across the state that cultivated a passion. And a lot of efforts are really necessary to cultivate that in the absence of schools. For example, Lauren does a lot of work in outreach at the University of Washington to try to fill some of those gaps and pull in some students who might have missed out on those opportunities before they start at university. So that's the broader narrative of the inequities. Shannon's now going to tell us a broader story around what this looks like across the state and how this varies along many different dimensions. So she has some draft data that she's going to share. Shannon, I'll go ahead and just advance slides when you let me know.
Oh, okay. All right. I was okay. So let's start with data collection. So a couple, I'm trying to 2019 legislative session is where we really start with looking at collecting data around computer science and those students who are taking it. They passed legislation 5088, which is going to require all high schools to offer students the opportunity to take a computer science course. We don't have a definition for computer science, and so that was our first work. So last year in September, we brought a team together to define computer science for Washington State, and then also around that definition, take a look at how we were going to track the data. So this was all published in the beginning of August, and so on the computer science website you will see our report. But what it's going to let us do is look at those trends now and see how we can work with those moving forward. Next slide. So this is the definition of computer science, and there's several people here in the room that were part of our team. We created a definition that is kind of broad and overarching. I don't want you guys to take a look at it and think, oh, my class is not named in there. It's not about whether we explicitly state a course name, but you should be able to look at that and find some of the content that you're teaching in your classes. Also, please, if you have a question, just unmute, stop, ask. We're a small enough group. I think that would be great. Did Amy or Greg, did either one of you want to say something about creating the definition?
Sure, I can say a bit. I was at the one of the workshops in which we came together to do this down in Olympia. We basically came together at Evergreen State in a room and tried to take things like the CSTA and K-12 CS teaching standards and find ways that we could summarize them in a way that were compatible with the existing offerings in the state. And the challenge here, of course, is that if the definition was too narrow, we would exclude a lot of existing courses. If it was too permissive, we might end up capturing things like keyboarding courses that weren't really teaching things about computer science. And so really the task was trying to find a definition that hit that sweet spot of being clear enough about including CS, but not so restrictive that it would suddenly exclude a bunch of the ongoing and really good efforts on the, that were already happening in the state. So that's where this definition came from.
Yeah, so what we did then is we took our definition and we applied it to the state courses, and that's what's going to allow us to do a capture. So next slide. We do have some draft data. It's going through the process to be approved to be published, which can be a 2 to 3 month process. But what we did is we pulled those course codes, and we pulled from the districts how many people say they were teaching this course. So you can see the number of courses that were offered that are considered computer science at this time. But we do understand that the data is at this point kind of flawed. The names of the classes that were coded, say, under AP Computer Science Principles ranged even into Microsoft Word. And so this data, I think, doesn't give us a real accurate representation of what's out there, but it's as close as we have right now, and it gives us a way to move forward. But if you think about the states, you know, all high schools are going to have to offer the opportunity to take a computer science course. We only have 172 districts, so we're going to have a lot of people with needs on how can they bring this into their high school students have that opportunity.
Shannon, may I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
I notice there's 18 Java programming courses offered and 115 AP Computer Science A. Does the AP Computer Science A subsume the 18? Is there overlap, or these are just based off of the names given by the public schools that you were looking at?
Right. So if they coded it as Java programming, then they do not, their district probably does not have an AP coordinator, or they do not have it to be able to take the AP exam. And so those courses would be under a Java programming. It will not be subsumed. So if it's an AP, they've definitely gone through the whole AP process. Good question. Any others?
I've done some attempts to try and like go look at the school's websites and figure out what the actual content is and aggregate it differently. And if people are interested in that also very rough aggregate, I'm happy to share them. Just send me a message.
Excellent.
It correlates with this fairly well, but it has a little bit more granularity on some of the topics.
Right, right. And so what we're hoping is in the next year or two, we'll be working with districts to correctly code their courses so that when we pull the data, it'll be more accurate. But this is our start, and we are starting to train districts to take a look at those course codes. Next slide. So one of the things that the legislature asked us to do is to provide information around AP courses, and really, you know, not very many AP Computer Science A in the scope of things, but I'm really surprised at the data around the AP Computer Science Principles, because I really felt that that was growing at a large rate. And at least the College Board was talking about that. But again, that's just a really small percentage. Okay, next slide. We pulled the data on the students, and one of the things that we pulled was their grade level. And so it's kind of encouraging to me to see 9th grade increasing. Hopefully these become more and more become required 9th grade courses in the high schools. That's kind of what I'm hoping that number is. And they're slightly larger in 7th and 8th, but 6th graders really don't have much of an opportunity. Okay. Next slide. So here's some race and ethnicity. And as you can see, you know, there's a lot of disparity here. But one of the things I want to draw your attention to is our Hispanic and Latino numbers. You know, when we look at the numbers statewide, our distribution is really the same as it is statewide with our population, except the Hispanic normally are much lower. This is twice as high as the state population percentage. We have two programs happening in this area. We have a CS for All ecosystems project happening, and we also have a Microsoft has its Tech Spark, and that's over in Wenatchee, Yakima area, and they have really brought in a lot of students to that. So I think that's a number that as a state we can be pretty proud of, because we know now that, you know, if the work is done and the support is there, students will take the course. Next slide. And then, of course, gender. You know, this is way below state population. And in 2014, we were reporting 20% girls. So if you think 6 years and only 6%, that's a very low number. But trying to find ways to engage girls would be really helpful. Next slide. So some of this is our special education, free and reduced lunch. It's really a national issue when you take a look at free and reduced lunch. A lot of the schools that do not offer computer science have large free and reduced numbers. Therefore, we don't have a lot of them taking computer science courses, which is sad, because it also shows there's a lot of interest for them as well. Next slide. So trying to gather data on teachers was a little more difficult. It's a whole nother data system that we had to try to capture this. And so what they've provided me is some information around really, how many teachers do we really have teaching out of field, how many have a limited certificate, and then how many of them have less than 5 years experience. And so I thought this was, you know, really interesting. Limited certificates statewide are only 6%, and we're twice that. So it kind of says a lot about what we need to do to get teachers, you know, certified to take computer science and provide them with training. Okay. All right, so who is teaching computer science? And so, you know, the thing that's kind of interesting is that this is pretty much statewide average. So statewide, we really have about 26% males teaching, and 76% women, or 74% women. So, you know, we're really online with that. And I know that the thought around that is that we had more males teaching computer science. And so this was kind of an interesting graphic to, I think we need more research around those. So we dug a little deeper and we took a look at seeing what the ethnicity and race was around those teachers. And as you can see, you know, it's white. Very, very white. So how do we get them more ethnicity? How do we get those teachers actually, how do we get communities to hire teachers that can teach computer science that represent their populations and can really support those students? And so I think Amy is working a lot on that, and I don't know if she wants to say a few words about that.
Yeah, I'll mention some more about this later when we talk about pre-service, but that's a major part of changing the diversity of teachers is preparing more diverse teachers. The University of Washington's College of Education just has received a really massive philanthropic gift to do some of that diversification across math and science and other STEM subjects, and computer science will be part of that in their program.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that has come out of our creating this definition of computer science is we really have a process now, and we can start collecting data for middle school and high school, but we have no way of collecting data for K-5. So what does that look like? You know, sometimes we have standalone courses, sometimes we have pullouts. You know, we have some integration. What does that look like? How do we track that? How do we get that data? And that's a nationwide issue that's going on, is trying to find ways to be able to get that data. But right now, we really don't have a way of doing that. Okay, next slide. So I think this is the story right here. You know, even though we do have about 58% of schools offering it, only 5% of the Washington state student population takes a computer science. So we do know it's just a glimpse at you know, data for 1 year. That's probably a little suspect, but less than 5% of Washington students get to take computer science, and that's really a telling statistic. Hopefully, you know, we can, by requiring schools to provide students with the opportunities, hopefully we can get with counselors and with administrators to talk about the benefits of computer science, and allowing for us to promote those courses within the high school. And again, you know, we need a more diverse student body taking computer science, and what does that look like? Unfortunately, the data around the teachers is that most of them are women, and most of them are teaching outside of their area. There is not a lot of documentation on their the programs, and that's another thing we're looking at, is really what is their degree, what is their endorsement area. And so we're trying to figure out how to get that data so we can look more in depth at who is actually teaching it, and where we can provide some in-service support. So, okay, next, I think that's it. Yeah, so again, questions. How do we go forward? What do we need to do? And I mean, that was a lot of data. It should be, you know, published. I don't know, everything is taking about 2 months, but that data right now is draft data around a narrative, and hopefully we'll have that report published here quickly. But you know, how do we develop this ecosystem now that we understand a little bit more about where the students are and where the teachers are?
All right, thanks, Shannon. Let's talk about what we can do about it. There's clearly a lot of gaps for us to address, and there's a lot of opportunities for us to address them. So we're going to take turns just talking about different opportunities to contribute, different ways that you might engage. I will start off just by pointing out that we have a website that's csforallwa.org that tries to aggregate a lot of these opportunities and initiatives and ways of supporting and engaging. And it's divided up by different audiences too. So if you find yourself in one of those audience groups, go read the content there, see if you know all of the things that are there. And if you see something missing that you know about, let us know what's missing. And if you wonder about things that maybe should be added, but you're not sure what information is there, you can send some feedback there about that too. And then we can expand that website. And we're trying to maintain this site really as a ground truth of everything happening in the state for different stakeholder groups. So we really rely on all of you to tell us what's happening so that we have all of that information in one place. And then of course, share it with people so that everybody in the ecosystem teaching computer science at any level has some awareness about all of these larger structural issues and opportunities to try to improve them. Grants, Shannon.
So we have given out another round of grants. What is really nice though for this year is that we did get the legislature to change the proviso to allow us to offer 50% of our grants without a match. And so you're going to see a lot more rural districts in here, a lot more with a higher free and reduced lunch population. The only criteria is they had to have a free and reduced lunch rate above 50%. And so that did open it up to a lot more schools. Unfortunately, COVID also did a lot to schools, just a whole bunch of stuff going on, preparing for school, figuring out if they're hybrid or in person or what was happening. And so, that's kind of limiting also some of the things that they could do with the grant money for this year. So, I think it's very encouraging we get more people involved and these other schools that are more rural to get some money to help support them. But at this point too, we are still, we still have grants. So we have no indication that the grants will go away. So it'll be $1 million a year. And going forward, and hopefully, maybe your school might want to apply for a computer science grant, and that information is on our website as well.
Great. Another change that's happened legislatively that Shannon alluded to is that we did a lot of partnership over the past couple of years to lobby for a new state law that requires all high schools to offer CS electives by 2022-23, which is now only about 1.5 years away. So we're getting pretty close to that, that deadline. Everybody needs to chip in some ways to help schools meet this requirement. Sharing the guidance document that Shannon mentioned is one way to do that. Sharing this website is one way to do that. Supporting pre-service efforts is one way to do that. And so think of this as like a statewide goal. And if you already are at a school that offers computer science, and you're teaching it, think of yourself as a resource for other schools to find ways of doing that in sustainable ways as well. Because you probably know a lot about what works and what doesn't. And you can share with neighboring schools and districts some of the lessons that you've learned. Professional development.
Yes, and so one of the things that is happening too is that the ESDs have received a grant to put together an online professional development series of courses, and they have reached out to us, and so we do have one of those courses available. It's on Foundations of Computer Science. And so we have an opportunity here to really increase, some of those supporting professional development for our in-service teachers. Also, AVID is just really a key partner with CODE and in bringing some of those trainings to our state. And we do have some support from Microsoft, their TechSpart, at least in Central Washington. We need to collect a better a better list, a better set of resources for teachers of what's out there. So if you do know of professional development opportunities that are available, please let us know. Amy definitely will put that on the website. But later on too, I have your ESD contacts on this, who you can talk to and see what they're doing, because there's some work on computer science in the ESDs happening.
And then for pre-service teachers, there's a lot of new efforts as well. There are 2 existing approved programs, one at Whitworth and one at Central Washington University, an undergraduate UTeach program. And there's a new program in review that I'm helping lead at the University of Washington, and a 4th at Western Washington University that Carolyn is helping to lead. And so we may have in the next couple of years 4 programs across the state that are preparing new CS teachers, but also teachers with other endorsements. So you might imagine graduates with a math and CS endorsement, or science and CS, or social studies and CS. So lots of interesting combinations there. So help undergraduates that you know of, if you have connections with them, develop some interests in CS teaching so that they can aspire to start getting their certifications in those programs. And we have links to all of these places on the CS for All Washington website, so you can point them to that place, get them to the websites for these programs, and hopefully someday they can enroll and do that. Particularly focus on teachers that are not well represented in our current teaching population in the state. It seems like we have a lot of white women, which is wonderful. Let's find some Black women who want to be CS teachers. Let's find some Black men who want to be CS teachers, some Hispanic women and men, and even non-binary people who might want to be teachers. So there's a lot of opportunity there to draw in other populations into CS teaching.
So can I ask a question about this?
Sure.
So one barrier I've run into, I'm Alec McTavish. I've been teaching CS since like 2001. I have a CS endorsement on my general ed certificate from when we had it, when I got mine in 96 or 7, whenever it was. I constantly have to get a CTE certification as well to teach my classes. Partly because of where the funding is coming, mostly because of where the funding is coming from. The barrier to that endorsement, it's a frustration and an annoyance across over a decade. If we want to get these social studies in CS, English in CS, and all of this stuff, there's got to be a better recognition or path for people who have a CS endorsement on their state certificate versus the people who are getting CTE certificates.
Yeah, and that's the bill that I'm running this upcoming legislative session, is to correct that. So I also have the CS endorsement, and I was, co-sponsor of the bill that created the endorsement. And I was talking to Drew Hansen, and our legislative intent was that people with a CS endorsement would be able to teach all computer science classes. Well, if you teach a CTE course, you're jeopardizing the enhanced funding for a CTE course, and most districts are making them CTE so they get that enhanced funding. So effectively, that endorsement is pretty much useless.
Exactly.
So I think it's ironic, because if you actually look at the list of course codes that we can teach when we get that endorsement, it includes everything I'm teaching right now, but they also require this so they don't violate this current WAC. So we're basically changing that WAC. The prime sponsor is Alec Jabara, and Drew Hansen is the co-sponsor. So it should be pretty straightforward. I don't think it's going to be all that contentious, but we're fixing it.
So is the gist of that a person with the CS endorsement will be able to teach a CTE class and not kill the funding?
Yeah, if it works out the way we expect, if you have that course ID listed under your endorsements, you should be able to teach that regardless of whether it's a CTE course or not.
Chad, have you been in coordination with co.org or Washington STEM about this one?
No, I haven't, not yet. I've basically just been working with OSPI, but I'll bring them in if we need the big guns. I think this is pretty much a slam dunk bill, and I'd like to keep it under the radar if possible, just so it goes in as a technical fix, because Drew and I know the legislative intent because we were the original prime sponsors, and so I think this should be considered a technical fix. Yeah,
I only mentioned that just because co.org and Washington STEM, in partnership with me and some others, have been pushing very similar kinds of ideas too. So we might just join forces behind the scenes so that we have one larger consistent voice around that.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah,
Write me an email and we can share some information.
can do.
I'm sorry, I have another question about the recruitment of kids. I find I have a problem with the math requirement. Like, I can't start recruiting until these kids have gotten through the algebra and the geometry. Is there any chance that, you know, some of these kids that can be really excelling in programming, but they, you know, they struggle with some of the geometries because on their transcript, they need that? I'm kind of like, my recruitment starts with after my geometry kids, because they have to have that algebra and geometry. And I didn't know, because it's a math credit, but the state doesn't recognize it as a math credit until they get through that algebra and geometry. It's a third year math credit.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, it's a real card, especially my EL kids. I have EL kids that they just do well on programming, but they struggle with geometry because of the language, but they don't have a problem with programming for me.
So to your point too, AP Computer Science A and AP Computer Science principles by legislation, districts are required to offer them as either math or science. That would be a third year math or science, and so those could fill that requirement. There also is course equivalencies through CTE, which allow districts to develop a course for math credit. And so there is a possibility too. Right now, we're hoping by the spring we will have a framework developed for AP Computer Science as a math credit that kind of spells out everything that needs to be done and be taught in that. And so I think more districts will be ready to adopt those as a math credit with that framework too. So yes.
But there's an important.
But it won't replace. I mean, the issue I have is the requirement that the algebra and geometry is kind of like a precursor. Yeah. I don't want that precursor. I want kids that, hey, I want the flexibility. I want the creativity and because you're getting the same abstract learning through a different venue. To me, it's a barrier of saying, okay, you got to take algebra. You got to take geometry.
There is no prerequisite for that. I mean, there is no prerequisite. So if your school is making those prerequisites, then you might want to have a talk with them.
I'm not talking prerequisites. I'm saying to graduate with a diploma, you have to have algebra and geometry per the math side, because I also teach the math side in calc. So it's not, to me, it's not, I have kids that are in algebra that are in my course, and they're fine. They just can't use it as a third year math credit. It's just a elective, because the state says you cannot use it as a math until you have done these other things. So I'm wondering if that's something that will be addressed, and maybe it's not as big a problem as I think, but as I get a more diverse population in my school,
sure.
I have kids that like, oh, I see you're doing programming, but I'm in geometry. Can I take your programming instead of geometry? And I'm like, honey, you can take it with it, but you have to have geometry on your transcript according to get a diploma in this state.
So Kristen, I would be really happy if you would email me and Perfect. We can discuss some of the requirements around that.
Thank you.
I would, definitely discuss this more in depth with you so I understand exactly what your question is.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
I think to just butt in here, I think that the big issue is that, yes, we can double credit as math, but all of those are as the third year of math. So the algebra and geometry have to happen regardless, is I think what I'm hearing there. We could probably serve ourselves well if we were to do some real focus. I mean, I know Lakeside did some work on this, but a real focus on coming up with some courses that align with some of those algebra and geometry classes, but that are a computer science, at least computer science heavy course. That might address some of what I hear in that question, at least.
I mean, that's great. I'm really open to, a discussion around this. And so if we need to get a group together too and talk about those issues, I'm open to that. Just let me
Thank
know
you.
if that's something you're interested in doing.
Great. Well, we've got a few more slides here. I know Shannon has to leave in about 10 minutes too, and then we can do some more questions. We'll go through these really quickly. Help with outreach, right? Until there's really robust integration of CS in schools for all youth, outreach is going to be a place where we can fill some of those gaps, and they'll still be necessary even if we were to achieve that too. So partner with outreach organizations, try to reach underserved communities in particular, the ones where there are gaps. We'll be posting lots of data on the CS for All Washington website that shows where some of those gaps are. So that's another way you can contribute. And then Shannon has some details about some statewide communities that we're calling Win for CS.
Right, I think you might have to hit, it might be.
Okay, there it is.
There we go. All right. Okay. So we do have a Win for CS Twitter account. So you can hashtag us, you can add us. We're hoping to use this to distribute professional development opportunities, information that comes out about materials and curriculum. So if anybody is definitely interested in getting those updates, Win for CS through Twitter. This is also in support of our, we have a computer science grant to the ESDs, and the ESDs are doing some computer science work around developing communities that will support teachers. And so we have 3 meetings a year statewide, and we also have those meetings within each of the ESD regions to help support you for Win for computer science. I do have the names of the representatives that are on this team for the ESDs. They're included in the slides, so when those come out, you will, that contact information is there. Also, this is the information around the LMS solutions that the ESDs are working on. They have support for, all of those LMS platforms, but they're also going to start doing more with computer science. So like I said, we just got one up on foundations of computer science, and we're working to develop some more in service that's available online for our teachers. Regional coordinators for that. This is the list for the LMS regional coordinators that you would contact if you have some information or you need some information. So that's the list there, and you'll have that. And then I think there's, yeah, okay. So here's the Twitter. So yeah, follow us, hashtag us. If there's things happening in your community, please include us on the hashtag. Let's let the whole state know everything that we're doing. We also, and I'll let Amy talk about this, we have a Slack channel. We're just looking for other ways to connect with everyone. We will be having a computer science summit possibly coming up in October. We're planning for that. It'll be virtual, but in this summit too, we're going to look for ways that we can support teachers in professional development.
All right. That's what we've got. There's lots more on the website. I know Shannon has a few minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions?
There were a couple of questions in chat that I thought I would throw out
Okay.
that I just wanted to make sure got handled. One was, how do we recruit a diverse pre-service teacher candidates? I think that's a big open question. There was a little bit of discussion about that.
That is a big
some
open.
Carolyn, right?
Yeah, I know Carolyn certainly has this on her mind, and I do too. Both of us are thinking about launching new pre-service programs, and the two that exist have also had some challenges attracting students and diverse students to their pre-service programs as well. And clearly there's a bunch of structural factors, one of them being, why would you want to be a CS teacher if you know enough about CS to go get a job in CS? You can make a lot more money, right? So part of this is figuring out that population of students who really are passionate about teaching and thinking about teaching in CS and getting their attention. And part of that is telling a different story about CS, right? It's not just about making great things in industry, but it's also about empowering people to make the right things and deciding what not to make and making sure that what we make serves our communities. And that's really what teachers are well positioned to do in their schools. And then of course there's other structural issues like tuition is expensive. How can you afford to pay for a master's program at the University of Washington when you graduate? You might not be paid enough to even pay off loans you might have taken to pay for that. And so that's why the University of Washington at least is focused mostly on philanthropic gifts to make sure that we can defray the costs of those tuition and fees for all students, so that we have a level playing field for anybody that aspires to be a teacher to get access to those certifications. Many more gaps that are necessary to diversify the teaching workforce, but those are some of the major ones I think I see for CS.
I think one of the things that I keep thinking about is our biology teachers, for the most part, haven't been biologists. Our physics teachers haven't necessarily been physicists like out in the field, but for some reason I find when I'm training, a lot of CS teachers are really reluctant to say that they're a CS teacher because they haven't done computer science elsewhere. And I've seen this even in joining this local CSTA chapters. Oh, CSTA isn't necessarily for me. I'm not a computer scientist. And so I think a bit of encouragement can also help there. Letting teachers even know that they understand the basics behind the curriculum, even if they may not know the language that they're teaching or not yet, or don't feel comfortable with it. And so I think, I don't know how we can overcome that.
Yeah, there's a big bootstrapping problem there too, right? You saw how few, let's say, Black girls were in the populations of students taking CS classes. Mm-hmm. Where would they ever get a passion for teaching CS if they're not even in those classes? So okay. There's a hard chicken and egg problem there where we need some strong leadership and some great teachers to really create that energy. And Shannon pointed out some great things happening in Central Washington around Hispanic youth. And I'm certain that there are just strong leaders there that are really solving that bootstrapping problem through their leadership and their vision. So we need that across the state.
I see Alex's hand is up, but I do want to, this is a question that just dovetails right off of that. Are there success models of districts overtly addressing the gaps that we're discussing? And maybe that's something that Shannon, before she leaves, can address if she knows of anything, or maybe Amy, if you know too, or if anybody does.
You know, I think a lot of our work around our ecosystems in Central Washington are having some really a lot of success, and we are looking at that model. How are they getting a broader participation in computer science courses? And so things that are happening, we really need to take a look at why they're happening, what they're doing, what is creating these successes. But that was a grant that was given out in 2019 and has just ended in 2020. And we really need to take a hard look at that data and see what they were doing, because for just 1 year, that increase was amazing. So yes, things are happening. We do have you know, some successes to look at. But again, you know, just finding out who's taking those courses is where we're starting right now.
Alec, you had a question?
Sorry about that. Yeah, more a suggestion. I wonder, it might be just a crazy idea, but what about in the terms of the pre-service teachers? Do we have any way we could maybe do like a 3-week, I don't know how long it would be, observation or internship where we like target math and science teachers, or like any teachers who have any kind of CS education, even in their undergrad background, to come out and be in classrooms to see if we can spark that interest there and have a path out of that.
That may very well be a huge component of making some of the pre-service programs successful. I'll give an example. UW right now is in the middle of doing their admissions round for their next cohort for their secondary teacher education program. And there's about 15 candidates in the pool that have some prior CS coursework who might be good prospects for doing this new endorsement that we're building out. But we need to convince them, right? We need to convince them to stick around for that 5th quarter and get that CS endorsement on top of their existing one that they're choosing. And so taking them to schools and inspiring them to do that, and then subsidizing their 5th quarter tuition. These are some of the things it might take in that 1st year to really get them on board with that.
The CS endorsement is just the NES test, right? Can't they just finish out regularly and just go run out and take the endorsement test?
They can. Their motivation is that they don't feel capable of passing it, and they also don't feel capable of teaching those subjects either. And so that's why they want that 5th quarter, is for us to help prepare them.
And we also want to inspire and equip them, you know, so they're not just clearing that hurdle, but they go out feeling great about it.
Right. We want to build that confidence, and I think they want that, and that's why they want to stick around for that extra quarter. Other pre-service programs are structured differently. Some of them are very content knowledge focused, where they're helping build some confidence in CS knowledge with a little bit less focus on pedagogy. I think the UW one will be more pedagogy focused and less content knowledge focused. So there's different mixtures that different universities are looking at.
I know Shannon has to leave. There's one more, I think that is pretty quick. Is there a constraint on what the CS high schools must teach? Is it CSP, CSA, ECS, web page design, or anything else?
So to count as a computer science course, there is that course code, and inside our computer science document, we do have it aligned with zip codes as well. So if you're a CTE teacher, you can take a look at that zip code and see what kind of a course you would need to take. There is also in the document, there is descriptions of those courses. So you can take a look at what you're teaching and actually see where it fits in the state course codes to make it easier for us to track that data.
I have a question about, have you thought of trying to integrate CS with subjects other than math and science? So like CS for art, CS for humanities. I mean, there's a lot of synergy, and it's much easier, I think, to relate to. Because one of the things I'm running into is this stereotype that you have to be good in math and science to do CS. And the whole point of CS is that you don't have to be good in math and science, right? It's a gateway to all these other subjects. So I'm just curious if any work has been done there.
Yeah, well, as Shannon pointed out when she was talking about data, we don't have data on great work like that is almost certainly already happening across the state, right? We don't have an easy way for us to see all of the integrations that people are doing in all of the subject areas. So we expect that much of that is already happening. I think another interesting question is on the pre-service side. How do we prepare, let's say, social studies teachers and art teachers and language arts teachers and convince them that they want to do an add-on endorsement in CS2 and show them those really exciting integration points. So I would say there's lots of opportunity. There's lots of uncertainty about how much it's already happening. So I 100% affirm that, and we should just be celebrating that as much as the science and math integration ideas.
So I apologize, I do have to go. Thank you guys for this wonderful discussion. I'd like to hear more. If you have questions, I just put my email in the chat. Just give me an email. If we want to get another CSTA meeting together to talk more about this, I'm open to that as well. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Hey, before everybody, so we have extra time to ask more questions or or whatnot. But before we go, we did promise as a door prize for anybody who was here that we would raffle off a $50 CSTA plus membership. So if you have one currently, we'll just pay for the following year or something like that. We'll give you, now I've left off those of us who are, so Amy, I left you off too, but I hope that's okay. I can add you too. But Alec and Lawrence as leadership in CSTA, we want to, so I have flippity.net all set up, and I'm just going to go and roll this and see who actually gets it. And it looks like it's Kristen. Or I think I spelled your Kirsten, sorry.
Thank you.
I will get in touch with you, and we'll work out how that gets reimbursed.
Perfect. Thank you.
Congrats. Anyway, yeah. So time now for any other questions, share outs. How are things going? Questions.
I can stay for a few more minutes for questions, but then I need to go fix my phone activation.
Oh, Alec, do you still have your hand up, or are you just?
Sorry, should have put that down. My bad.
Oh, were there two marks? Oops. Uh-oh.
That's okay. We both lost anyway.
Yeah, I usually put like the first name, last initial if I catch that, but I was just trying to do this very quickly. So,
no problem.
yeah. But
if there aren't any more questions for me, thank you so much for the audience. Hopefully all of you can find ways of helping contribute to those gaps in the state. Thanks a lot for your leadership.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, and oh, let me go ahead and stop the recording. We don't need to have this recorded anymore.